So I'm Laura, I head up our comms team at Branded 3, so I oversee all of the PR, social media and outreach. So all of the link building that everyone's been so against so far today. So before I start, there is something that I want to go into on that kind of theme. So I'm going to be talking about how to implement an audience engagement strategy. And I think that that's key. So a lot of things, a lot of the work that we do is around getting links, especially in our team, and getting our clients talked about. And one of the things that a lot of people still get hung up on is making sure that they're all followed links and they're all just really high authority links that we know we need. And yes, that is important, and it is going to help your SEO, but it's actually got really difficult to build good links nowadays. And I appreciate I would say that because I'm in charge of building them and I would like to have an excuse, but it genuinely has. And some of the reasons for that are because this is what's key. So reaching your audience is key, and engaging with that audience, that's key. That's what Google wants you to do. What makes that a challenge is the fact that a lot of bloggers nowadays have realised that actually they can make money from running a blog, and they like to advertise that on their site, and they'll write on their site that they'll do sponsored posts or that they'll do advertising. We at Branded 3, we take a view. We don't want to work with anyone that advertises the fact on their blog that they do advertising or that they do sponsored posts, because Google is going to see that they're selling links effectively. And we don't buy links anyway, but we don't want to be associated with a blog that can be seen as selling links. But the challenge that we have there is actually a lot of the blogs that are going to help our clients reach their audience and engage with their audience are these blogs that do have those disclaimers on there. So it's always a balancing act for us to explain to our clients and in these kind of presentations that actually sometimes no-follow links are going to be just as valuable as followed links, because we might have to no-follow a link because we don't want to put you at risk of a penalty. But actually that no-follow link, that might bring you more value than a followed link would. So an example, Daily Mail, they no-follow all their links. But would you say no to a link on the Daily Mail with all the traffic driving potential it's got? No, you probably wouldn't. The example that Tim and Steve showed you where we got our client on the Sun sits behind a paywall, so the link that we got them on there, actually not that valuable in terms of SEO, because Google can't crawl it. We know through our measurement that drove at least £30,000 worth of sales for them directly from that link. So again, would you say no to that link because it's not a followed link? You probably wouldn't. So that's one of the key things that I want to get across is actually reaching the audience needs to go above any of the SEO metrics that you would put on a link, because if you're doing that, you're still going to see the value, you're still going to see the ROI and the engagement, and that's what we need to get. We don't need to just focus on, is it a followed link? Has it got a high domain authority? Because those are the kind of metrics that you looked at old school, and we're not doing that anymore. So I just wanted to talk about that before we move on. So in terms of an audience engagement strategy, this is the kind of process that we go through. So first step is understanding who your online audience is, and there's a reason that I've put the word online in there, because your online audience is going to be very different to your offline audience. A lot of people make the mistake of just thinking my audience is my audience, and it's not. It's going to be different, and we need to understand how it's different to then be able to engage with them in an online capacity. Understanding where they hang out online, so what sites are they visiting? It's not just about blogs, news sites. Where else are they going? What social media is prevalent among them? What forums are they using? Where else are they engaging? Where are they asking questions? That's the kind of things that we need to understand. And then we need to understand their online engagement behaviour. So what kind of content are they engaging with? And how does that differ depending on where they are? So how does it differ how they'd comment on a blog to what they'd share on their social media channels, or what they'd write on a forum or a review site? And then we need to create online personas to target them. So looking at everything that we've already found out from the first 3 stages, what does that tell us? How can we target these different types of people that hang out in different places and engage in different ways and ultimately are going to buy different things from us and take different actions on our site? And then testing and refining is really one of the key points. Is we're never going to get this 100% right first time. I'd love to say that we could, but no one can. You're never going to get it 100%. So the key is testing the theories that we've come up with and making sure, okay, so we thought that this audience would behave in this way. Are they behaving in that way? And we need to be really honest when we look at that and say, okay, maybe that wasn't 100% right. Maybe we need to tweak it. Maybe we need to do this. And the key is that refining, because this content strategy, we talk about a process. It's not really a process, it's more of a cycle, because you need to keep going around and checking and seeing how your audience has changed. How does the emergence of a new social media channel change? Should you be engaging with them on there? How's that changed their behaviour? How different privacy laws change their behaviour and the way they engage? We need to be constantly coming back to this, and that's why testing and refining is key. So the first point in terms of I knew I'd do that. Yay. So what your audience looks like. So these are some of the tools that we use to find out what the online audience looks like. So as I said, it's often slightly different to the offline audience. So often online it's slightly younger. In terms of the data, it normally skews towards a slightly more female audience than you'd normally see offline. There's different things like that we need to look at and understand before we can start targeting them. So these are some of the channels that we do that. So obviously the three on the left-hand side are online tools, but the offline data is really important as well. So anything that our clients already have or you already have as a brand is really useful for us to understand your online audience. So I've got a few screenshots of the different tools and how we can use them, but just to be clear, when we talk about audience, we're not just talking about customers. We're talking about potential customers that haven't bought from you yet. We're talking about your actual customers, but we're also talking about the influencers that might be talking about you online or might be engaging with you online, but actually they're never going to buy from you, but they're still really important to be engaging with you. They're not the people that your products are geared at, but actually they could still sell your products to other people, and we still need to be engaging with them. So just taking a look at Google Analytics, there's a wealth of data. If everyone's familiar with the demographic tag that you can implement in your Google Analytics, we can see lots of really useful information. It's really important to dig deep into this so we can see, the age profile of the people that are visiting your website. As I said, this will likely show that it's younger than what you might have seen from your overall customer profile. We can see the gender, but importantly, we can also see their interests and what else they're in the market for. So when we start looking at, well, where should we put in your content and where are they engaging? These are the places that they are engaging. So for this site in particular, a lot of their audience are movie lovers, so what can we do based on that that's going to help to engage with them and that they're going to share and be interested in? It's really important to delve into this and look at also how valuable are these people. So yes, we can see that we've got a load of 25 to 34-year-olds visiting our site, but are they the customers or are they the influencers? Are they the ones that are actually buying from us, or are they the ones that are sharing our content? Because how we target them is going to be different based on what their actual behaviour is like when they hit the site. So that's why it's really important to dig into this data and see how it all comes together. And what's also interesting is to compare it. So we use a tool called Brandwatch, which is a social listening tool. And this is always really interesting to look at because this is looking at who's talking about you, not just who's buying from you and who's visiting your website. And that's actually really key, and it's something that people often miss out. So yes, we want to know who's buying from you, but we also want to know who's talking about you and who's influencing people to visit your site, because there will be a difference between who talks about you and who buys from you and visits the website. But this gives us really useful data as well that we can then compare. So we can look at, do the interests of the people that are talking about you match up to the people that are actually visiting your site? And if not, why not? How can we look at that, and how can we create content that resonates with them? How does it differ between genders? So we can see here the chart at the bottom, it's a bit hard to make out when it's on the screen, but so the pink is the female audience, the blue is the male audience. But this is looking at the different interests that they've got and looking at how they appeal to different people. So the one on the far left-hand side is animals and pets. So that's a massively female audience that's talking about that. So we need to make sure that we're bearing all of this in mind when we're coming up with our content strategies and our assets that we're going to be using for link acquisition to make sure that we're appealing to the right people and we really understand our audience. There's also a lot of insight to be gained from social platforms. So Facebook Insights, for example, Twitter Analytics, LinkedIn Insights, all the different platforms have their own insights tools. The key is gathering all this data together and getting as much as possible so that you can analyse it and look at how does the audience differ by channel, because that's key. The messaging that you put out on Facebook is probably going to be slightly different to what people want to consume on Twitter, and the same again for your own company blog. And we need to be bearing that in mind and looking at how do the different demographics and interests differ by what platform they're engaging with us on, to make sure that they're actually going to engage, because if you're just showing them content that they're not interested in, they're just going to bounce from your site, they're going to bounce from your social channels, and they're not going to have a good experience. So moving on to the next stage, so where they hang out online. There's all these different wealth of places that they could be hanging out. I mean, Steve touched on it, the 0 moment of truth, 10.4 resources, or whatever it actually is nowadays. There's all these different places that they could be hanging out, and chances are they're hanging out on all of them. But what we need to look at there is, okay, so we know that they're on those different places, but how does what they do on those places change? How long are they spending on each one? how does it differ what they're talking about? So how are they talking about you on forums compared to how they're talking about you in comments on blogs and news sites, and how does that differ again to how they talk to their friends on social media? It's all going to be different, and we need to understand that before we can really engage with the audience. So we can look at that again in brand watch. So we can look at, where are you being talked about? Is it on blogs? For this brand, it's massively on Twitter, so we know that that's a growth area. We need to have a really clear strategy there. Which sites are they talking about you on? So again, TripAdvisor, a key site for a lot of brands now, not just travel brands, hotel brands, all different ones are relevant for TripAdvisor. But then also it gives us really great metrics for news sites. So if we know that, the Telegraph has featured you previously, we can start delving in and looking at what have they said about you and what have they said about your competitors, and how does that differ from what's being said on other channels. And the key really is finding out who the influencers are. We need to spend 80% of our time engaging with the influencers, because ultimately that's where the reach is going to go, and that's how you're going to get your message out there. So there's various tools that we can use to gauge influencers. Some of these on the screen will help us to do that. There's tools such as Follow Along, BuzzSumo, all different ones have been developed to help us find the influencers. And again, the key is looking at a combination of those tools. So not just looking at who's an influencer in, say, the travel industry or the fashion industry, but who's actually an influencer for your brand is key, because it's not going to be the same people necessarily that are overall influencers that are influencers for you. And this is what tools like Brandwatch and BuzzSumo help us to really narrow down into, is actually who's the influencers talking about my brand or my competitor's brand that I want to target, not just generally who's an influencer. And then we need to look at their online engagement behaviour. So we know who the influencers are, we know where they're hanging out, we know what they look like, but what kind of content resonates on each channel, and therefore what kind of content should we be producing to maximise that and replicate that for our brand. And all of these different tools will help us to do that. And the key is combining them to make sure you've got an overall view and exporting the data wherever you can. A lot of them will give you the opportunity to export to Excel. Do that and categorise it. So look at the different types of content so you can see, is it video content? Is it image content? Is it a product that they're engaging with? Or is it some brand messaging? Is it a PR campaign? Categorise it so that you can see how does it differ per channel. Is it on Facebook that people engage with PR activity? But on a news site, actually all they care about is product launches, and that's what they're talking about. We need to understand that so that we can target them effectively. The important thing is to join conversations and not start them. It's an old saying that's used quite a lot, and I think Andy's used it in a previous presentation, which is where I'm copying it from. But when you go to a party, you don't walk into a party and just start your own conversation and hope that someone joins you. You go in there, you listen to what people are saying, and then you join a conversation, and that's how you make friends, and that's how you network and enjoy your life. It's the same online. You shouldn't be going online as a brand and just trying to start a new conversation. You need to listen to what people are already engaging with, what they're already talking about, and then join that conversation and not start a new one. Again, another cheesy saying, but we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Again, this is crucial. We should be spending twice as much time listening to what's being said as doing the talking ourselves as brands. And it's easy to forget about that because, old school marketing and advertising was all one way. It was all us pushing a message out. But now with social media, review sites, forums, everyone's talking about your brand, whether you want them to or not. And we need to be listening to that and understanding what they're saying, where the pain points are, what questions they're asking, so that we can address that and really engage with them. And then next stage is building your online personas. So based on all that data, we can start to actually put almost faces to those people. So this is an example of looking at how people engage online. So we can see that, we've got Emma, she's 24, she's sharing a lot of video content. We know that because we categorised the content, as we said, and looked at what they're engaging with. We know that she's reading a lot of BuzzFeed, those kind of sites, and we know that the main social channels she's using are Snapchat and Instagram. We can build a strategy based on that. If we know that, she's one of our profitable customers, she's the one that's spending and she's influential, we can start looking at, okay, well, if she's reading BuzzFeed, how do we target BuzzFeed? And if she's using Snapchat and Instagram, what content can we be putting out there? It doesn't necessarily mean starting an Instagram channel yourself if actually that's not relevant to the rest of your audience. It could be, all right, well, who are the influencers on Instagram and how can we get them to share our content so that it's still getting in front of Emma without us actually having to go on there as a brand and do it. There's all different ways that we can go about it, but we need to do all that research first to understand who these people are, how they're engaging, and therefore how we can work with them, both in terms of on-site content, but in terms of all the other places that we want them to be. And then finally, test small and refine. So it's important not to go out there with a massive campaign initially if actually you don't know if it's going to work. So test small, do different amounts of small paid seeding to see how it resonates with that audience. If you've identified that it's a younger audience, it's going to resonate with quiz type content, test it on Facebook and stumble upon, look at how they react to it before you go big, because there's no point wasting your money before you know that it's going to work. So the important is to have a robust seeding strategy. So once you've done that testing, you've done that seeding, you know that it's working, make sure you've got your seeding strategy in place. So again, this is something that's often missed in SEO campaigns is, right, well, it's all about the links, so we're only going to go to blogs and news sites because they're the only people that can give us followed links. There's so many other places to go. Social media, forums. Forums are often left out because of the history that forums have with SEO and that they're seen as a really spammy place to go because of comment spam. Actually, they're amazing to use for an SEO campaign if it's relevant. So we have a sports client that we work with, and when we had a really big quiz that we were doing for them, we seeded it on all the relevant fan forums. It drove so much traffic to the site, traffic that has the potential to convert. Yes, they might not have been followed links, yes, they might not be helping rankings directly, but actually driving people to the site that are engaging with the site, that are sharing the content, that are spending time on there, that's still all a massively good signal to Google. That's still going to help you rank without having the direct followed link that's doing that. And engaging with the influencers, making sure that they're sharing your content, because the more traffic that you get to a site, the more likely you are to get links because the more people are seeing your content. So even if social media and influencers aren't directly going to link and directly impact rankings, they will in the long term, and we see that all the time in correlation studies. Oh, wrong way. Final thing to say, an integrated strategy is imperative. So it's important to make sure once you've done all this research and you know where your audience is hanging out and you know what they look like, as well as looking at that from an online perspective, you're looking at it as a holistic approach as well, because there's no point having one strategy that's going on your social channels or even on your online channels as a whole if actually when someone's on the tube they're seeing an advert that's on a totally unrelated note, or when they're watching a TV advert it's totally unrelated, or they're reading a news article offline and it's got nothing to do with the campaign that they're seeing online. Again, that's not going to resonate with people, they're not going to engage, and they're just going to get confused, and we don't want to confuse people. We want them to understand what our brand's about, what our campaign's about, and ultimately we want them to be buying products, and they're not going to do that if they're in a confused state about what you're actually telling them to do. And that's it from me.